In this video, we're going to talk about an app development and business strategy that's going to help you launch your app earlier and grow your app and business faster. And it relates to vertical and horizontal markets and how you can use the differences strategically for your own growth. That's what we're going to dive into today, and make sure you stick around until the end, because we also have a training that's going to take this further and help you move forward with your app correctly. So stick around for that as well. Now, first, if you're new around here, my name is Kristen, and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps, where we help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to either start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding and with no technical background required. So this is a really important strategy for your app and for your business. So we're going to dig into this today to see how you can use it most effectively for your own app. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to jump over to the whiteboard here. So what we're talking about today are vertical versus horizontal markets and how you can approach them differently to help you move faster, but also scale more quickly and efficiently, which is what we want for you. So first, let's talk about what these two things are. So we're going to do a pretty quick intro here. Basically, we have what you would call a vertical market, and this is where your app and your business is essentially just very niche. You are serving one main segment of a market, one specific demographic. You have a very clear description on who your user type is, what you are helping them do, and you stay contained within that. You kind of become a specialist within this market versus the opposite, which would be a horizontal market. Now here, you might be helping lots of different people do lots of different things. Instead of being a niche specialist, you're more of a generalist. So you have a little bit for everyone instead of a lot of the one specific thing for fewer people. So you can look at this as either going a mile wide and an inch deep, or an inch wide and a mile deep. You've probably heard something like that before. So that's really the difference between a vertical and a horizontal market. Now, you can be building either and you can be successful with either, but it's important to understand how you're going to approach these so that you can actually have the right plan in place and know which next steps you should be taking with your app and with your business. Now, to start, I do want to say that it is generally easier to build initial traction when you are in a vertical market, or when your product, your app, is focused on a vertical market, because you don't have to be spread so thinly. You don't have to focus on so many things all at once. You can just get really good at the one thing that you're doing and grow it from there. And so I personally tend to prefer taking the approach of having a vertical market or a product that is geared towards a vertical market. Now, the reason why is not because taking the other approach doesn't work, but when you are new to a space, or when you are creating a brand new product, when you are new to building and launching apps, when you're new to growing app-based businesses, I find it can be really tough to focus on a horizontal market because there's already so much new stuff that you're doing. You're already stepping outside your wheelhouse, stepping outside your comfort zone, that it can add a lot of clutter, confusion, disorganization, and honestly, just a lot of stress, and it can be hard to generate early traction like that. So I personally prefer taking the vertical approach. Now, the way you approach this depends on your own goals and your priorities. But I want to talk through that so you can have a clear idea of which approach you should be taking as well, and then how to go about taking the right next steps from there. So if you're looking at your app and your app-based business from a technical standpoint, right now, you are likely focusing on the first version of your app. So right now, your focus is version 1, or maybe somewhere around there, maybe version 1.5, somewhere around there. You're in the initial phases. When that's the case, your ultimate goal right now is user testing, okay? You want to be doing user testing so you can get feedback. Now, when you're in the initial versions with your app, that really is the ultimate goal. You're getting feedback, or you should be getting feedback in different ways and with different intents during these early versions, but ultimately, that's what you're aiming for. Okay, now what you want to get feedback on is a few different areas. So we're going to take the vertical approach here. Now let's look at this rectangle right here as your version 1 app. Okay, so we have 3 different layers that we're going to focus on with your app. And with each different one, you want to be getting feedback to help you grow from there. So in the very bottom layer here, you're focusing on solving a specific problem for your target market. Okay, your app is solving a very specific problem, or at least it should be. Now, when we move up, you are looking at process. Your app is essentially a collection of processes that solve the problem, right? The functions, the features that make up your app, those are processes. And those processes exist solely to solve the problem that your app is being built to solve. And then when we get up to the top here, we look at the outcome. You're solving a problem with your app. Those processes are built in order to solve that problem, and they are built in order to enable an outcome. So when you look at your first version app, really what you're doing here is you are kind of helping users make a transition up from having this problem right here to using your processes, using your app, so they can achieve a specific outcome, right? That's the goal of your version 1 app. And with those in mind, you want to do user testing so you can get feedback on how well you have approached those, on how well you have executed. Because what I want you to keep in mind is no matter how much validation you have for your app, no matter how much need you have for your app, no matter how many people might be saying, I want to use your app, at the end of the day, all of this in your version 1 app, all of this, it's a guess. It's a hypothesis. It might be a very, very good one and a very strong one, but it still is. It's all a test. You're testing to see how well you've pinpointed that problem, how well you've created processes to solve it, and how well those processes enable your users to achieve an outcome, okay? So we're gonna get back to the vertical and the horizontal markets, but this is really important to understand first. This is what you're going for with your version 1 app. Okay, now we're looking at this version 1 in that same vertical rectangle, right? When you're starting out, when you're first launching, if you're focusing on a vertical market, meaning you are focusing on a specific niche or segment of the market, that means that you can launch this version 1 and you can focus on these 3 specific things, and you can get feedback specifically on that version 1 app and on those 3 specific components, okay? Now, if you are launching and you are taking the approach of wanting to target a horizontal market, this is what I see people generally doing. Instead of focusing on their version 1 here and getting those 3 layers nailed down and perfect first, they focus on their version 1 here, and then they focus on the next segment of the market that they want to approach, and the next segment, and the next, and the next. And you can see where I'm going with this, okay? Instead of focusing on one niche or one segment, it's almost like they create their version 1, but for lots of different segments, and they lump it all into one app so that this whole thing, for them at least, is their version 1, okay? And all of this is done pre-launch, meaning no feedback, which, remember, that's the goal of your first version. It's to get feedback, okay? So when all of this down here is your version 1, and all of this is done pre-launch, tell me, how clear is the feedback that you're going to get on every single one of these sections, right? On this version 1 app. Imagine how hard it would be to get the type of feedback you need from something like this versus something like this, okay? So in the top one, on the top left here, we have a very narrow approach, very pinpointed, really specific. And then on the bottom, we have a really broad approach. It's really general, very vague in terms of feedback, right? Because you don't want to just bring people on your app and say, hey, what do you think? That's not going to be very helpful for you. It's not going to be valuable feedback. You need to be getting pinpointed feedback. But if you have a version 1 that looks like this, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. Okay. So when you are looking at what you want to include in your first version, who you want to target, what approach you want to take, I want you to keep this in mind. Look at it from this lens, because if you do that, it's going to help you understand the importance of keeping a contained scope, not only with your features, but again, with the problem that you're solving, with the processes necessary to solve that problem, and necessary to provide the certain outcome that your users are looking to achieve, okay? So I don't want you creating something so big that it makes it really hard to launch, that it takes a really long time to launch, and that makes it really hard for you to get feedback and grow. Because if your first goal is to get feedback and you need that feedback to grow, which you do, then it's going to take you a really long time to grow. You're just elongating every single step and muddying it, essentially. So what is the alternative? Well, you could just approach your app from the mindset of taking this, of targeting a vertical market, right? You could just take that approach. Or you could create an evolution. And this is personally what I like to see when you do eventually at least want to target a more horizontal market. So if you take that version 1 app and you pinpoint through your initial launch the problem, the processes, and the outcome, through your feedback, you are going to perfect this version 1. Now I say perfect, but really your app is never going to be perfect. It should always be an evolution, but you see what I mean. Really, you just want to get the feedback so you can make this version 1 better. Now, we want it to be better in terms of the problem, because we want to make sure we're solving the problem or problems in the very best way possible. We want to validate that the processes we've built have been built correctly and in a scalable way. So we're looking at this from both a strategic and a technical perspective. The processes have to essentially transition the person from the problem to the outcome, but they also have to be scalable because we're preparing for growth, right? So we want to make sure they're scalable technically as well. And you can really pinpoint the outcome. And really what you want to do is develop and iterate and evolve your app to the point where you are seamlessly helping users transition from that problem to that outcome. Now, meanwhile, you are focusing on perfecting the processes, right? As you're doing your testing, the feedback is going to help you understand how to adjust your processes strategically and technically. And really, you want to focus on a bigger picture of taking users from the problem to the outcome. Your processes are just the things that do that. Okay, so if you focus on this to start and you really nail this, right? You really perfect this version 1, well, then you can go horizontal later on, okay? And this is when you really see scale, because what you can do is perfect that version 1. You can be the specialist, and you can continue to be the specialist. You don't ever have to go to target a horizontal market, but if you want to, and this is often a natural sort of evolution, well, then you can have this version 1 that really efficiently helps people achieve an outcome. That's why they're buying from you. And that has really scalable processes. Now, once you have that, then when you start adding on these other user types, maybe, or these other use cases, maybe, and you start expanding, maybe broadening your target market, then you have a scalable base, okay? Then you know, okay, I've perfected this base. Now, when I start expanding, I don't have to have something really, convoluted and muddy and messy like this. Now you have a really streamlined and a really scalable approach that you have essentially, you've allowed yourself to launch earlier, which we want. We want you launching earlier so you can start growing. And not only that, you're now able to scale much more efficiently, much more effectively in the long term. And that's whether or not you end up broadening, whether or not you ever want to make an evolution like this, being able to have that scalable base and that really well-oiled first version here, even if you stay vertical, which is completely fine because that keeps you as the specialist, then you're just going to be able to scale all the more, so much more efficiently, because you're not having to fix all the cracks in the foundation as you build on top of it. Right? You're not going to have to go back and redo that because your base layer works, right? And it works well. Building on top of that becomes so much easier when it does. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you have been unclear on who your app is for, if you feel like your development has just been delayed or it's taking way too long, a lot longer than it should, if you just don't have a lot of clarity around your app and around your target market, then I want you to spend some time thinking about this, because you might just be building too much too soon. Right? You might be focusing on way too many things way too early. So think about how you can nail that first version. And then if you want to expand, grow from there. But however you expand from there, you'll have a scalable, solid base on which you can build on top of. And that's just going to serve you so well in the long run. So again, I hope that's helpful for you. Now, I mentioned an extended training that we have at the beginning of this video. And if you're just starting out with your app, or if you haven't started at all yet, and you want to make sure you're headed in the right direction, we have a free workshop you can join in on at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop. And it's going to take you through some strategic steps to help make sure that you're building the right things at the right time, that you're launching the right things at the right time. We're going to take you through some different tech components, talk about some no-code tools, and really just get you moving forward strategically with your app so that, again, you can have that solid base to grow on top of. That's what we want for you, long-term sustainability and scalability. So again, you can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop and sign up for that. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.